Let's talk to Jay Rayner now, though. He's the Observer's food critic, because we were talking just before there about the cost of things.
Yes.
I can't find how much chips cost at the Ritz, but what I can tell you is if you wanted to go there for breakfast and you wanted to have something like grilled kippers,
yes,
it's £37.
Well, you see, that's because
it's the Ritz. If you wanted to have scrambled eggs and smoked salmon with a few chives on the top, 40 quid.
But that's the Ritz. I mean, that's, you know...
Yeah, but it's not any better than any number of other places. You get it for half the price.
They don't drag them in off the street and say, you'll eat here, and by the way, we'll take that credit card out of your pocket and charge you for it. People choose to go there. That's what they expect.
Yeah, but they've got more money than sense, in my view. Let's talk to Mr. Rayner and see what he thinks of it all. Jay, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us.
Afternoon. Are we talking stupid prices at the Ritz?
We are talking stupid prices at the Ritz. Well, Mike was telling me earlier that they've got into a bit of trouble because it turns out that they're bringing in some McCain's frozen oven chips around the back door and selling them.
I'm really sorry, guys. I was told you wanted to talk to me about tipping.
Well, we are going to talk about tipping, but I didn't realise that being a food critic, you would be so straight-jacketed. I mean, we can talk about tipping in a minute. Don't worry. But let's talk about whether the Ritz should be flogging, McCain's oven chips for whatever it is, 45 quid for fish and chips.
No.
Exactly.
Let's move on to tipping.
Let's move on to tipping. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, on the tipping scene here, I mean, does anybody know what the clear pattern is? When you pay that 12.5% and it's on a credit card, is there any guarantee it gets back to the people who've been serving you your food at your table?
None at all. That's the problem. I've been doing that job for 17 years, and I can't tell you exactly what happens. The whole distinction between what's a tip, a gratuity, what is a service charge, which bit gets that applied to it, it is as clear as mud. And I don't think it's been made any clearer today by the Business Secretary's announcement of a consultation changes in the law. I genuinely think we just need to scrap the whole lot of it, increase prices of dishes so that the diner knows what they're paying, and pay waiters a proper salary rather than having them dependent on, the mood that you or I are in when we come in for dinner.
But that's one of the problems, isn't it? Because paying them a proper salary is precisely what doesn't work terribly well, because the main problem with the service industry in this country is that people don't rely on their tips to make a living, and so therefore the service isn't perhaps as good as it is in America, where they do.
Well, you can go one of two ways. The American system, where they talk about their tips and how important it is. Have you ever tried in America? I'm sure you've been. Have you ever tried not paying the tip in a restaurant?
I have, and in fact, quite successfully. Once in New York, the guy got very upset with me.
They won't let you out the restaurant.
They get very, very angry. Well, I think the more interesting lesson here is if you look to a country like Japan, where they take their profession very seriously, and if you try to tip them, they're almost offended. In fact, they genuinely are offended. There is, whenever anybody objects to the idea of getting rid of tips and services, there are all these reasons they come up with, but none of them can actually say why, if it works in Japan or Australia or New Zealand, it can't work here. Either we believe that waiters are doing a proper job that deserves respect and the respect of a wage, or we don't. I think it does, and I think the simplest way is to get rid of this endless confusion over tips and service charges by paying waiters properly and then putting that on the bill.
Well, Jay, I've just been told by my colleague here, my colleague in arms, again called Mike, that you can actually say to them when they're preparing the bill, knock off the service charge at 12.5%. Now, if that's the case, I fully endorse that, because even if I do pay it with the service charge, if a particular waiter or waitress has been very attentive to me, I put my hand in my pocket, I bring out a 20 quid bill, and I try to surreptitiously push it into their hand. So that actually...
Why don't you just leave it on the table?
I don't leave it on the table because, A, somebody else might pick it up, but B, their colleagues will know that they've been favoured by a particular customer and might claim a percentage of that 20 quid. Is that not right?
Well, it's just confusing and strange and feudal, frankly. I mean, one of the things is that you may think that your waiter has given you brilliant service, but perhaps they've been given the space in which to do so by the efficiency of all the other waiters on the floor and the efficiency of the kitchen. Restaurants are a machine. They work from front to back of house, and if one part of them falls apart, it's really down to just one person being rubbish at their job.
But that's true, though. But does that not mean that when... I mean, I know you're saying you may be not in favour of what happens in New York. I mean, New York, for me, is one of the great places to go out for a meal, because the restaurant business there is very, very cutthroat. It works very well. You have to be very, very good at your job. Otherwise, the restaurant fails. The food has to be great. It has to be quick. It has to be served by people with a smile on their face. And if it doesn't work, the restaurant's done and dusted. And I think here, it's a very different case. You still go to lots of places in Britain where the service is dreadful.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Actually, I don't think there's much difference between London and New York these days, if I'm really honest. And
I think there is still. It's a lot better here now, but it's still not as good as it is there.
Oh, I don't know. I find some of the American service where they hunker down beside you and rest their hand against your upper arm and say, "Hi guys, how are we today?" And let me tell you about my specials. You just want to nail their hands to the floor.
Yeah, but it's still rather that than waiting 20 minutes when you walk in to sit down and nobody's even come and asked you what you want.
But see, the reality is, if we want waiting to be a professional career, something with a real career structure, attracting people who are good at it, we're going to have to start paying for it. And I don't see how having this feudal system based on some kind of antiquated mythology that goes back to the days of lords and servants really serves that when we're in the 21st century.
It's the same
Make sure that waiters are paid properly, get rid of the tips, which nobody understands anyway. If you really want to leave a little extra on the table in cash, well, you still can.
Well, it's the same with barmen in New York, isn't it, Jay? A many barmen in New York have you seen, operate so efficiently and then come back to England and 2 days later you've got a guy in a pub asking you why you want more than one lump of ice in your gin and tonic, why you want a slice of lemon, why you want a clean glass.
You're now just turning into an angry old man on a Monday afternoon.
No, I'm not. They, you know as well as I do that people talk very proudly about being a barman in a New York pub or a New York bar because it is a very, very respectable profession.
Well, it is.
It is.
But it's driven by an entirely different culture. I think we need a change of culture over here because we've ended up with the kind of service we deserve. And we've ended up with the kind of people going into it who see it as just the thing to do before the other thing they're going to do and not actually the main thing. And the only way that it's ever going to change is if we get rid of our tipping system, which is a mess, and replace it with an equitable pay system for the staff.
I think there's more to it than that, but we haven't got
I think it's in the DNA of restaurant tourism in this country.
I think it is, because I think there's a lot of people in this country don't want to serve other people. I think that's a problem as well. What do you think of that?
I think it's rubbish.
Well, I tell you what, I'd rather have a restaurant full of Eastern European waiters and waitresses than actually English waiters and waitresses. They're better.
I'm not getting involved.
I'm
really not.
Jay only wants to talk about the things that we've agreed.
I thought you were going to have a sensible conversation.
You must be joking,
I think
Jay.
that's sensible. I think that's pretty sensible. That's my observation.
Jay's a food critic. I can't believe he ever has any sensible conversation with anybody. What sort of job is that, for heaven's sake? This is Talk Sport.